Hi there, this is Dr. Randy Cale. I'm doing a short video reviewing some of the cases. Of course, I'm going to be hiding client identities, but I'm going to show you several things. First of all, we track parent and or adult feedback on behavior, emotion, and function, cognition, how kids are doing or how adults are doing. And so while it is interesting, fascinating, and useful to see the change in the QEEG over time, it's much more instructive and in many ways important to see what actual changes occur in the home or in someone's life while doing neurofeedback. So I'm going to show you some of the trackers that demonstrate. I'm just going to go through some recent examples, and then I'll do some of the QEEG comparisons, very basic comparisons, but the visuals will give you a good sense of how things have changed. First, this is a 16-year-old female, very recent client. She's training about 2 months. Quite honestly, parents have not been that consistent in following through. She's got about 20 sessions of training, but we see here on the tracker, if you'll notice, decision-making is much improved, organization's a bit improved, procrastination. And again, this is not what we'll see in another 2 months, and I'm encouraging them to train more. So her motivation is much better, concentration's a bit better. Distractibility hasn't changed yet, but we haven't trained locations relevant to that. She's quite a talker. That's dramatically improved. Anxiety, if you see down here, right here, is really down 3/4. Self-esteem, I don't know why we have that on the tracker. It seems not to be relevant, really. 14-year-old adolescent male, training again, only 20 sessions, thereabouts. But you can see anger and aggressions down from a 10 to a 4. We don't expect all these, quite honestly, to have changed in that period of time, and we don't always, with 20, 25 sessions of training, get this kind of result, but it's pretty typical, as long as, particularly for parents, but for adults it's a little different, but as long as you're managing the environment, that has to do with how much exposure to electronics. It has to do with reduction in simple carbs a lot of times, simple carbohydrates. It has to do with managing sleep patterns, drinking plenty of water, exercise, and doing some heart rate variability training, which this mom is really doing all that beautifully. Organization dramatically improved. Judging others, which was a problem, much improved. Patience improved 50%. Impulsivity way down, as well as irritability. Not listening, that's really a 33-40% better. Not much change in oppositional defiant behavior. Look at the anxiety again, down quite significantly. In that 20 to 50 session range, we would expect to see these kinds of things, and again, very typical. We'll just look at a couple more trackers, and then we'll actually look at the QEEG map to show you what the brain looks like. I'm just going down through the list. These are all clients. This is March of 2023. These are all clients. Most of them that we're looking at are within 3 months. Everyone so far. Same is true for her. She started. There's her first tracker was January 6th. Motivation and energy dramatically improved. Quality of sleep improved. Memory improved. Agitation. Emotional stability. Impulsivity, a smidge. Worry, negative thinking. And for her, by the way, this is with dropping her anxiolytic medication and sleep medication that she's been on for quite a few years. The worry is down, anxiety's improved, depression's improved. Her IBS symptoms dramatically improved, as you see there. Dizziness dramatically improved. She had a few fainting spells, so things are looking really much better for her. Couple key points. She's only done home training. She's done that exclusively. She's trained almost every day on our unlimited training program. And equally important is that she has been very willing to look at her thought processes and abandon some of the interest that therapy has promoted in looking backwards rather than forwards. I encourage, I coach, I focus on a forward-focused mentality, how to get your thoughts, your intentions, your beliefs to line up with your training. She's an excellent example of, in less than 90 days, just what is quite remarkable in terms of turnaround in her life. And I speak with her fairly regularly to keep on track. And her level of excitement, the sense of having hopefulness because she's, by her own self-report, has been in therapy since age 16, and it had always been a struggle, and so she's very excited to have her life back. Coincidentally, I'm looking at my notes from my conversation with her this week. So many improvements, energy, mood. I'm happy most of the time, feel more positivity. I now look forward to things. This has been transformative. It seems, this is her comment, goodwill abounds as long as your eyes are open. She describes interactions with people as being so different, only because she's so different and the way she looks at them and sees them. This week alone, I had, at least in one day, I had 5 conversations that were quite similar about the kind of change that people were getting. So next, this is an interesting case because it's a child under the age of 6 who was sort of amotivated for school and participation in life. This was there were 2 key components: impulsivity, attention span, and her motivation. And you see this is, we don't have a QEEG on her because at that age the results are questionable for a number of reasons. But the 2 key variables, attention span, focus, motivation, energy, have improved, and impulsivity has improved. Now, disorganization, distractibility, emotional, you see where these are initially at a 4 or 3. The problem is at that age, of course, is that you run into maturational factors, which continues to be an issue here. For example, when I listen to Mom's discussion of what's going on for her as a kindergartner, right, then a lot of it is typical, and there's gains, but it's very unlikely for a while that we're going to get this down to a 1 or 0 because of maturational issues. It's just what a lot of kindergartners do. They're a bit impulsive, staying on track is tough. So it's a good example of a case where we see what you might think of as moderate results, but Mom is happy, and it's in terms of her involvement in the classroom and her ability to get something out of her academic experience, it's much improved. This is a 12-year-old male whose brother, a few years back, trained for ADD and also did peak performance training. He's an athlete who coincidentally went on the season after to win the state championship in his sport and category and is now training for the Olympics. it's very interesting what we can do with the brain for peak performance purposes. But anyway, so now 12-year-old brother's training, we see motivation and energy dramatically improved. Anger is down, distractibility is down, impulsivity is down. His ability to filter out distractions improved. Organization and perseveration just almost non-existent. And you can see the first date of training was 11/10/22. Mother and son together have worked close together, and I would say he trains 5 to 6 days a week on our unlimited home training. He's done nothing in office. I just had a client who potential client with a phone call who was speaking with another clinician who had indicated that home training was not effective, and we're finding it's a relatively new evolution in our ability to monitor. We can monitor, manage, change, adjust, tweak protocols just like someone's in the office, and we're getting many times we're getting better results because you can train more frequently for folks who are highly motivated, sometimes twice a day. And as long as they're willing to do a little bit of coaching about how to manage the environment and food and sleep, those sorts of things, these kind of results are possible. Fatigue dramatically improved. Worry, negative thinking is down a bit, but not much. With a 12-year-old, I don't really do therapeutic work with him. This has a lot to do with the school environment and some bullies he's dealing with. It's a little bit of another issue. His reaction to limit setting, where he was throwing a fit when mom or dad would cut off the internet or YouTube, he's now just handling things with ease. You can kind of see these trend lines, what they look like, but I think these graphs are simpler. So just again, this is me just going down through the list, more recent folks. One more case example, a 9-year-old boy with a lot of sort of behavioral tics. Parents happen to be in the mental health world, had some skepticism about this, but touching behavior, blowing behaviors down, almost non-existent. Obsessive worries improved, impulsivity is better, irritability is better, organization's improved, obsessive thinking, distractibility, all these are better. Started the 1st of October, pretty consistent. On average, 3 to 5 times per week of training at home, no in-office training. Another good example. The power of neurofeedback to influence the primary concerns here. Now, we, at a certain point, based on the map and reported symptoms, we choose protocols on a combination of understanding what's most urgent and problematic and what the map tells us. So now that most of this tic-like and repetitive behavior is reduced, we can shift our focus and address a little more directly protocols that will likely influence these other areas of life. So now I'm doing a map comparison. This is a young man, 16, who entered with lots of defiant behavior, very difficult, loud, challenging, and he has been doing great. But here is, he does office training, not home training. So we see here that this is one of the a comparison tool that we use. We can see here that between October and February, 40%, 6% of the sites normalized, but this is the movement here is quite significant. 30% moved a full standard deviation and 5% moved 2 standard deviations. Now, There are this gets a bit complex, but we're just going to look at this one main measurement, for example, because this is the magnitude of this young man's brainwave pattern for delta, theta, alpha, beta, and high beta. We really aren't that concerned about high beta unless it turns yellow or red. It's a little bit complicated, but the reality is we aren't that concerned. When we see a lot of this pattern, particularly this frontal theta that is elevated, right? We get a lot of dysregulated behavior. Generally speaking, when delta, theta, alpha, this frontal, when you see them elevated like that, slow wave, these are considered slow waves, delta, theta, and alpha. Beta is considered a fast wave. But when these get elevated like this, particularly this, a lot of dysregulated behavior, anxiety, panic attacks, problem sleeping, you can't regulate a thought. If it hooks you, you can't really put it down. You sort of see all this green here, right? And we see that this is a dramatic improvement over things. This T4 here also went from, the yellow is the highest. It's 2+ standard deviations. So when something comes down to the red, it's much better, not nearly as much of a problem. So you can see we improved one location here as well, but we were targeting primarily bringing this theta down. Did so successfully, and mom and son are both tickled. This is a 9-year-old boy, home training over the course of 6 months, thereabouts. About 60, 65 sessions, not as consistent as I would have liked, but we see 52% normalized, right? We see a lot of things moving into the norm. And we do have a tracker on him. I'm going to bring it up. I haven't looked at it, but let's see what it looks like. By the way, this is his before map. This was his map in September. He trained for a while after this, by the way, but you can see all the, I've even got both of these adjusted, so we're looking at apples to apples. But you can see all of this elevation here, and particularly, again, look at this delta, how much delta has come down there. And even this frontal theta has improved considerably. But the proof is in the pudding, right? Meaning that this figure doesn't mean much if we can't see something on the tracker to support that. So here we are looking at first trackers and then most recent. Motivation, energy, sleep dramatically improved. You see, well, everything across the board is at a 1 here. I knew she was happy with things. I didn't know quite that happy, but so we have anger and aggression, argumentative, careless mistakes, organization, distractibility, emotional outburst, hyperactivity, oppositional behavior, patience, and procrastination. Everything is down, which is really with my last phone conversation with her. Negative moods every now and then, but really just dramatically improved. So, as I often say, you don't have to have a map look perfect in order for there to, particularly when you have that much extreme elevation. If you can bring things down a fair amount, you get often get nice behavioral change. Okay, this is a tracker for a 13-year-old autistic child, a young boy, pre-severe autism. And you can see the results here. Now, in this situation, mom started out training vigorously. We made great progress. And then the last 3 months became very spotty in terms of following through the training. So you see improvements with anger, his ability to handle novelty. For example, they had never been able to attend an event like a public event, particularly something with fireworks, where it would just be disastrous. And in the summer, then when they attended multiple public events, they had no issues, even tolerated fireworks with just putting his hands over the ears and then smiling and just loved it, wanted to go back. Distractibility a bit improved, emotional impulsivity, insomnia, all these are improved, which you don't often get with pretty severe autism. Self-injurious behavior was down, compulsive behavior improved, stemming, look at that, from a 10 to a 1. Agitation, lack of social awareness, dramatically improved. His ability to interact, to have friends, to engage socially, changed significantly. Now this hyperactivity is interesting that it's rated there, because the chart for her looks something like this. It looks like over time, it's like this, comes down to about a 2, and then it bumps up in the last month. It looks like about the last month and a half, something like that. And honestly, part of that was the sort of inconsistency with training, and some of the parenting pieces fell apart, and we talked about it at the end. I have spoken to her since, and she would estimate this at about a 5 presently. So, but overall, we can see the power of neurofeedback. Now let's look at the mapping. Okay, here we have 51% normalization. We have a lot. This blue is about what's reorganizing, but this is normalized and stabilized. And so we'll see here that when we look at the map at first glance, we don't see much that's changed, right? Hold just 1 second. So here we see for this young man with autism that we have this 53% normalization there, which is quite significant. Now he has a very highly elevated slow wave pattern, and we made progress, but not extreme progress, as you'll sort of see here. I've got these adjusted considerably, but you see the yellow's coming down to red, delta's dropping, so we made headway. It's still a while as his autism severe and the dysregulation severe, but we didn't have to achieve anywhere close to perfection to have a much more functional young man who's enjoying life, and parents are much happier. This is a mass comparison on a 12-year-old boy between March and the end of the year 2022. 60% normalization, 18% beautiful standard deviation. This young man has made significant gains, home, school, socially, functionally. You can see that in this original map, there's nothing that's in the green. Green would be normal, right? Lots of yellow and red. In the remap here, we see green is beginning to show up. We see red with very little yellow for what we call the slow waves, delta, alpha, and theta. He happens to have a lot of muscle tension. That's what this is really picking up here, which then creates, see this little artifact? It creates most of what we see here for beta. So his beta is much better off than what it appears, but you don't need to, I'm not trying to educate you on this, more just to give a visual demonstration of what the difference looks like and functionally what happens and changes. I have lots of other maps I could show you, but I see the amount of time, so I want to point out a couple of things. One of the primary factors we looked at is, and what you were seeing there is brainwave elevation. And so when you see something in the red or yellow, it's way above the norm. We want it to be down like this, right? So with those high elevations, we train it down. If the elevation's low, we try to train that up. Sometimes a more difficult task. But what you're seeing is a regulation in that brainwave coming down over time. And just to close this off, please understand, if this were our brain, the center of well-beingness, right? Biological factors, psychological factors, social factors, family, substance use, all these things are going to influence that brain, right? one of the keys to seeing dramatic and sustained change like you just saw comes not only from tuning in to the neurofeedback and keeping the protocols on track, all that sort of thing, mapping regularly, but addressing the biological variables that are going to affect the brain, genetic vulnerabilities. And then for kids, how do you manage the family and home, right? For adults, how do you manage your own psychology, the environment, habits? Where do you get social support? Certain things are should be intuitively obvious, right? If I'm vaping heavily every single day, depressing my brain, then I can train quite a bit and take 3 steps forward and 3 steps back. If I've got a very active, hyperactive, attention-seeking brain, ADD type brain, then I love video games. I love all that movement. I love packed, action-filled stuff. And it just reinforces the same brainwave pattern that's causing problems. So you've got to be able to set limits on that. As an adult, or if you're a parent, you've got to be able to do it with your kids. Or again, you can invest a lot of time in training, 3 steps forward, 3 steps back. Abusing the body in other ways, eating poorly, lots of simple carbs, add to inflammation in the brain, cause lots of problems in the gut. So I talk about all these components as an adult or whether we're working with your child, because without addressing these pieces and jumping into the training, you can get success, but it will be compromised. You're not going to see the kind of results that I just showed you here, which are typical of what we're able to get. So I hope that's helpful. If you have more questions, reach out to my assistant, Jennifer, at drcale.assistant@gmail.com, or give her a buzz at 518-383-0600. Again, I hope it's helpful, and if you have questions, reach out. If you're interested in training, of course, we'd love to work with you, and also reach out to Jennifer. Take care. Bye now.